Why is my chair sinking so much? Why is it doing that? By the end of the podcast, I'm just like down here.
All right. Hello, I'm Chris Lissaman and welcome to Sparks, a series by Interactive Workshops. In every episode, we spark something in work and life, from how to spark sales leaders to how to spark senior leaders to how to spark two leaders in the room. Today, we've got Blair Wagner back on the podcast. Welcome, Blair, and our special guest from VML, L&D Senior Coordinator, Lisandra Radu. Welcome to the show.
Hey.
Great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Really excited about this one and excited to hear a bit about you, a bit about your career and what you're doing now. Do you want to start us off with some career highlights?
Okay, so I've been working since I was 16 and I've done some random stuff.
Tell us what those random things are.
So I think my most random job ever was when I was it was Christmas in my first year of uni, and I worked in a paper factory, and I would have to bike to this factory for about 40 minutes and literally just put paper in this machine for 8 hours straight. So that's probably my most random job.
Wow, okay, that is quite random.
Yeah, so I would do anything to sponsor a good holiday. So that's what I did when I was a student. I graduated in 2019 and I ended up working for a French investment bank, which I knew nothing about. That was meant to be a summer internship, which turned into a 2-year role. That's where I discovered learning and development. I knew nothing about learning and development. It just sort of fell upon me. And so I like to call it the fun bit of HR. And I continue to feel this way about it. And then since 2021 now, I've been with VML, previously Wagner Thompson, but we've been VML since January. So that's me.
Great whistle-stop tour of those past things. Paper factories giving me very Dunder Mifflin vibes. That's what I'm imagining.
I wish. Yeah, but I was like the guys underneath. So I was the people. Yeah. I was warehouse.
Yeah. So not as much fun as
no.
Yeah, not as much drama. And tell us a bit more about your passion for L&D. You said you stumbled into it.
Yeah.
Do you like it now? Do you appreciate it now? You know what it is now?
Yeah. So that really helps. So I love it. I think it's been such a great opportunity for me and I've actually had a little bit of time to think about my motivations. And, like I said, I didn't really know what to expect from the world of work. Like, I'm a first generation immigrant. Like, I didn't have a lot of role models in that, in my everyday life. And so I think L&D for me is kind of a way of giving back, and I work a lot with the underrepresented groups within VML. So for me, it's really like a passion, but I'm really lucky to do it as a job. So yeah, I really enjoy it. It's challenging. It's always changing. It gives me the chance to be creative without, necessarily having to be someone who's very creative. And I get to own a lot of projects beginning to end, which is what I like the most, because I like to have control over my projects.
Saying nothing about your personality at all there.
Yeah, no.
Which Lisandra is very creative, by the way. I love how you slipped that in there, but she is actually very creative. I remember a portrait that you've drawn of me, and I was shocked that you could draw. But yeah.
That's my GCSE art
coming
through.
And you've both worked together on VML. Blair, you've worked from the interactive workshop side. Tell us a bit more about the work you've done together.
Yeah, so Lisandra and I met actually at our speakeasy brunch that we host, a little L&D networking event. I'll look at the camera and shout that out. Come to our speakeasy brunches. They're fun.
There is avocado toast.
There is avocado toast.
It's strong.
So we met there, and I think we just immediately clicked because we do have a lot of similarities as well. Like, I'm also a first-generation immigrant. I know we clicked on that. And we both kind of fell into L&D and now have this love for it for the same reasons. And then our first... And it's funny that you brought up, using L&D as a way to give back and helping, certain groups and communities, because the first thing we collaborated on was the WISE program, which is a women's empowerment program that Lisandra works on at VML, leads that actually. And so I came in kind of like, how can we support, how can we enhance it? Because they had this really good structure, but how can we add to it? And I think that's where the faster performance kind of topic comes in. And, you know, at IW, we're always like, theory is great, but what's the application of that? How does this actually look? So we had all the theory, we had the idea, and we were helping to see how can we actually give them the practical tools to apply this and actually see change in their performance. So that meant developing skill sessions, involving coaching, setting them up with some of our coaches. And what else did we do?
The self-assessment.
The self-assessment. How did I leave out the self-assessment? That was great because one of the insights that we were building it off of was, you know, that growth begins with self-awareness. Where are you now and where do you want to be? Which is where we brought in our AMP tool, which is really great. Shout out to Ross, which is really great self-assessment framework tool. Ross is going to butcher me for the correct terminology around that. But it's a great tool that we have, but we use it with different clients, and we use it with them. It's more bespoke. So we rebrand it to what they want, put in the competencies that they want. And we were able to, and I think we've never done that before, use it for this women's empowerment program and sort of using those competencies and defining the areas where they want to grow, and then, okay, how do we now facilitate that growth?
Yeah, really cool. So, and when we were discussing what we might talk about on the podcast, it was clear to me that everything that you put your attention into, there's this passion underneath for what you do. Where does that come from for you, Lisandra?
I think that's a great question. That's what I think. Over time, I've always been somebody who, like, once I enjoy something, and I've always liked to work with people, that was literally the only thing I knew. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to work with people. So I get my energy from that. I'm the sort of person that I do enjoy a job well done. So I think that's where I get some of my passion from. And then having spent some time reflecting on what it is that really drives me, I think I do always go back to that initial experience that I had when I came out of university, knowing absolutely nothing about the world of work and thinking, okay, so what would I have liked back in 2019? What would I have liked to have? So that then drives me, and I'm passionate about making sure that, and it's not that I had a bad experience, it's just that I didn't know what I didn't know. So how can I help people also figure out what they don't know? And I can tell them a little bit about what it is that might actually help them just get to that next level or just feel a little bit more confident quicker. So that's where that comes from. My own experience, basically. So it's all about me again. Yeah.
Like it is for all of us, I'm sure. And Blair, what is it for you that gets you out of bed in the morning?
I really don't want to turn this podcast into same. Like, we are so similar on a lot of things.
You're practically twins.
I know. But honestly, I feel the same. Like I said, Lisandra and I have similar backgrounds. And I didn't know about learning and development, didn't know anything about it. I just fell into it because I think it was actually your job post that you posted that I found online.
I remember
I think it was because you were the person who first screened me for this job. Full circle moment. But I remember just thinking, this sounds so interesting. And this sounds like something that helps people. Not to be, like cringe or, like virtue signaling or anything, but truly that is something that has driven a lot of my work, a lot of things that I study, a lot of things that interest me is like things that ultimately will help people in some way. And when I learned about learning and development and what it does for people, that description, it's the fun part of HR. It really is. Because you get to be creative. You get that kind of design thinking, which I have a little bit of an arts background. So it was good to bring that in, but I also get to bring out this nerdy side of like understanding how do people learn, how do people take information and apply that, like what's the best way to deliver that. So I think what gets me out of bed is the fact that no day is ever the same. It's always different, but also whatever I do at the end of the day, when I clock out, whatever I've produced, it's helping someone somewhere or it's contributing to something larger than me that will live with that organization and help people time and time again. Hopefully, that's the goal. Definitely.
Yeah, so it taps in your anthropology background and your care for people, which is underneath that as well. Is passion important for performance? Is it vital that we find passion when we find ourselves in the paper warehouse or when we stumble into a career? Is it vital that we find passion, or can we just kind of do a job and go home?
I would say you need passion. And you know what? I think you have to also be realistic. Like, you're not going to be passionate about every single thing that you do. Like, I'm not passionate about every single email I've ever sent. And but
you're not?
I know. But I think you have to be passionate about whatever it is that this role is fulfilling. So for me, with my paper warehouse, I was passionate about what that was enabling me to do, which was have a little bit of independence and go on holiday with my friends. So I was passionate about that. And therefore, I brought that and thought, okay, I'm going to take an extra shift. I'm going to do that now. In my current role, I'm passionate about the change that I can make. So similar to you feel like even if one person comes and says, "Oh my gosh, this was amazing," I'm passionate about that. So I think, and to prep for this, I've asked some of my friends. I was like, "What makes you tick?" And everyone came back and said, "I feel like I can make a difference. I like the industry I work in. I like, at the end of the day, I feel like I'm part of this bigger mission that we're trying to accomplish." So everyone came back and said that ultimately it is something more intrinsic that they feel that makes them want to do the work.
Absolutely. I think I actually used to have the opposite opinion. I used to be the person, and this is probably something I shouldn't admit. I used to think like, your job is your job. You don't have to be passionate about it. It just needs to make you money. Just be good at it. Do what you need to do. Clock out. Your passions can lie outside of work. And I think it's because I hadn't found my thing yet. So like every job, I liked jobs in the past. I actually have background in hospitality mostly, like served in restaurants, which I really loved. But I realize now, the reason I liked it was because I had a passion about food. And anyone who's ever talked to me about food knows this. They know how much I love talking about food and just the culinary world. But it's funny, your question makes me think of actually something I thought about last night. So last night, I probably shouldn't say this, but I went to a bar last night.
That's allowed. That's allowed.
Passionately went to a bar.
Night. But I went to go have a couple drinks with a friend. And this bar that we went to is one of those like fancy bars. I think it was like in the Mayfair area, whatever. Never been there before. It was a lovely environment. But this the bartender came up and was talking to us about the drinks. And they start describing it. They're like, "Have you been here before?" "No, never been here." They start telling the story behind the drinks, right? You have some bars you go into, they're just serving you the drink. That's fine. They're like, every drink was using ingredients that were forage, and they were specifically forage because it's this particular season for that plant, herb, like whatever it is that they're using in the drink. And they were even describing seasons within seasons. Like, we're in the winter season, but specifically from this month to that month, that's when the chestnuts grow. And that's why we made this chestnut liqueur that we're using in this. So I'm listening and I'm like, wow, this is a story. Yeah. But they had to have a passion behind that, right? To care that much about a drink. And don't get me wrong, like, I'm that person. I love that. I love a story. But most people generally, they're like, I just want a good drink. But for them to put that passion behind it, to understand the ingredients, that takes time, that takes studying. They could just be a bartender that shows up and just serves you the drink and doesn't tell you much about it. They're like, it's good, you want a recommendation, this is nice. But you could see their passion coming through. And I think that passion does lead to like a better performance in a way, because I had such a lovely experience because of that. It honestly, I feel like it made the drink taste better because I truly understood what I was drinking and why it's being presented to me. And I think, no matter what you do, so taking it out of L&D, that's just serving, but even in L&D, having passion for what you do, whatever it is you do, a little bit of passion can go a long way.
Yeah, maybe it helps us serve whoever we're serving, even that's just a boss or a manager, or whether we're directly benefiting the end user of a product or whatever that is. Yeah. Maybe that passion helps us serve in the right way. And thinking of the service hospitality industry, that's why we give tips, right? It's like someone kind of put something in that they didn't have to into their job. Yeah. They could have just served me drinks, but they injected something, this kind of magic that made me feel like I was welcome, made me feel like I was having a great time, I was comfortable or really happy in that environment. Absolutely. Yeah. And I want to talk about the sense that we've talked about on the podcast before of bringing your whole self to work. It's kind of a bit of a cliche, but we've talked about how we choose to show up, and kind of when you're on that train into the office, do you kind of have this conscious thought of, here's how I'm going to show up today? Or do you just kind of go with the flow and hope that your kind of positive nature is a good influence? What do you do when you are on the way to work? Do you have that kind of moment, that self-talk at all, or not?
I'm a big believer in finding a little bit of balance between how you show up. And I think as long as you remain professional, everything else can be yourself. And you know what you were saying, having passions outside of work, if you have that, you can bring that to work, and I think that makes you a better person. And I know, you know, there's all these jokes online about being a personality hire, but that but you know, you just, it is the experience. You are a whole person, and if your passions come from that, we have so many people who, through bringing their whole self to work, have actually made a real difference. And that's the whole point. So with the work that I do with the Catalyst Academy, it's an early careers program, and that's literally the whole point of going out there and finding people that have different backgrounds, that are different. And well, if they can't bring that difference to work and then they just fit in this mold, then what's the point? Well, I've just wasted my whole time doing that. So I think if you find the balance, and of course, you know, that there's ways to behave, and you have to continue to be, you know, productive, efficient and professional, blah, blah, blah. But after that, you should absolutely bring your whole self to work, because you spend at least 8 hours a day there. So it's in everyone's interest.
And are there examples at VML where you've seen people bringing that whole self to work for the benefit of VML?
Yeah.
You don't have to name names.
Yeah. No, we have. And I've been so lucky to have so many kind of inspirational people within the Catalyst cohort. And we have so many people who are passionate about accessibility or sustainability. And they've actually set up communities within the business that they've then gone on to work on actual client briefs and make sure that the work that we produce is more sustainable, is more accessible. So if they wouldn't have brought that, and that would have obviously helped their performance, helps our performance, helps us produce better, you know, products, services for the people that our clients then serve. It's great.
Yeah, it's brilliant, and helps your business succeed. Any particular stories of people who've brought something that feels very, very them, very authentically them?
I would say, so we have somebody who set up and it's called an ERG, an employee resource group. And he's set up something on accessibility. He's recently written a book about accessibility. You know, I'm part of this ERG, and for example, with our office move, so we've just had an office move now, there would have been conversations around how to make the office more accessible, and it just brings everyone together, and you start to think about things that maybe you wouldn't have thought about before. And it's the same for, you know, for our clients. You start to think about, oh, actually, you know, when we create this user experience on this website, maybe we shouldn't use these colors, because someone who, for some people, it won't be accessible. So bringing that in has helped us reach more people, essentially.
Yeah. And reach them in a way that works for them, rather than
exactly
what you want to create or what color you would like it.
Yeah.
It's them focus. It's, again, coming back to kind of service and serving them in the best possible way.
Yeah, exactly.
And Blair, you've had some experience of managing graduates here. What are your insights from that process? Because not easy, graduates. They've got so much enthusiasm for what they want to do. They're starting out in their career. They want to make a difference. How do you use that and manage that?
Yeah, so I feel like I've learned a lot personally from managing grads as well, because it's not like as straightforward as a process as you think it would be. It's actually the first time that I started managing. So I had to learn a lot about management while I was managing grads. And I think it is a bit of a different process. These are people who are just entering the beginning of their career. They're not, I mean, I still don't even know what I fully want to do all the time, but can you imagine, you know, at that age, and not necessarily age, even just early careers, that can encompass a wide range of like I was a grad at maybe not the most traditional grad age as well. And for people just entering their career, they have an idea of what they want to do, but you don't actually know because they haven't done it yet. Yeah. And it's such a learning process, and having to be patient and adaptable and flexible with them throughout that process. So I had one situation where someone entered, they were so excited about the position, and then about 6 months in realized like just something wasn't working, right? And I was like, what do we do? I don't want to lose you. I think you're brilliant. I want you to stay here, but I also am invested in your happiness as well. I want you to be happy. And I said, let's leave the office. We left the office. I was like, let's get out of this environment. Let's just one-to-one, let's just talk. And I actually took them to a pub up the road. Probably shouldn't be saying this. But
how many bars are you going to in a given week?
Wow, okay, I'm the second time talking about a bar in this episode. I'm gonna get myself in trouble. But took them up to a pub, just like relaxed environment, out of the office. They were getting very like stressed, and we talked for about 2 hours straight, just about everything, anything. Now, I should say, we had cultivated that type of relationship to be able to talk that way. I'm not saying that like everyone, you have to share deepest, darkest, and then we weren't sharing deepest, darkest, but making sure that you have that rapport with them to begin with. We talked for 2 hours, and I learned so much more about them and what they want to do and what they originally set out to do, and how life had kind of steered them in this direction, and they ended up in a place of doing what they thought was expected of them to do. And having that insight meant I could go back and really think about what was best for them. And now, good news, they're still here. They're in a newer role that I think really highlights their strengths more than anything. And they are smashing it, absolutely smashing it, and doing great and so valuable and just a big part of our team now. And then I had another grad where it was actually sort of the opposite problem in a way, just a different problem, where they were smashing, like they just, every competency, every KPI, all the fancy words. Every buzzword for like expectations, measurements. They just smashed through it. And it was almost like, I'm running out of things for you to do. I no longer know what to do. And it got to the point where they need to be managed by someone more senior than me. And then it got to the point where they were still coming to me because they were like, oh, this is great, but I just don't know, like, what else can I do? And I realized, where have I not seen you applied this passion and this energy? I realized they were, doing great at the job, the actual just, consulting, doing that. But internally, how have you contributed? So getting them to think about how can you contribute in different areas as well. And that was stretching them. So they're like, oh, I didn't think that was a space I could participate in and things like that. And once I set them off in that direction, came up with brilliant things to do. I mean, they're no longer with us, but it was still nice, like what they contributed to in their time here, and not like in a bad way that they're doing great. So I realized that sounded very bad, but
during that time, like, they're still
during
alive,
their time, they're still alive. They're still alive.
They just
just
moved
not
on in their
physically in
career.
the office, but it was really interesting working with someone like that because I'd never had that issue before.
And two different kind of, I don't know if it ends of the spectrum, but two different, very different examples of
performance management.
Yeah,
like I had to manage two very different types of performance styles, paces, things like that. So learned a lot through those processes.
Yeah, and you were laughing along as Blair said, someone was not quite in the right role. Does that happen at VML as well?
All the time. I see it all the time. This is my third time running the Catalyst Academy, and every single year without fail, somebody wants to change. We had it in the second year, we're literally on day one. They were like, two of us want to swap. They want to swap streams. So they would, at the time, they were doing rotations and they were completely different. And it worked out really well. They both ended up staying in the streams, and that, one of them now has been with us since she finished the program. But yeah, it happens all the time. And you just have to be flexible, and you have to give them the opportunity to excel. Like, I want them to be, like you say, happy. Like, if you found a different passion, okay, I've organized the program in this way, but forget about it. Let's figure out what you want to do, so that, you ultimately have to do the work, not me. So how can I support you to put you in the right places?
I think it's making them feel safe to do that as well. So I think a lot of people just think, this isn't working, I have to go. And that's not always the solution. It's like, we can work together on this. So making them feel that it's a partnership more than I'm telling you what to do, especially when you're managing someone. No, this goes both ways. Like, how can I support you? Because essentially, to me, management is just supporting someone through their own growth and making sure that they're reaching their goals, their dreams, their aspirations. And how can I help you do that? And I think sometimes people, they get a bit in their head and they worry and they're like, oh, if I'm not performing well in this, but it just means there's something else for you here. There's always something else. Yeah.
And it's never like, it's never personal.
Yeah.
Like, it's your career. I'm so happy to support you. Tell me how we can do it together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what ways do you find help enable people to be vulnerable like that? To say, I'm in the wrong role here. I need help. Like, what can we do other than go to the pub?
Yeah.
Which I
just go to the
which
pub.
I have done actually. Sam's behind the camera. Sam knows we've had good chats at the pub around work.
Well, I think
sometimes that is
the way that
a
getting
comfortable
them out
place.
of the environment, right? I think that's
And into a
such
better one,
it's
maybe.
But like, let's sometimes just going for a walk,
Yeah.
getting out of the space that's because you might feel like a bit trapped, a bit stressed, but let's step outside of these walls for a minute. I think the relational bit is really important. I think me being vulnerable and sharing my struggles. So I think sometimes, especially when you're being managed by someone else, it seems like they have it all together. If you look at people who are more senior than you, it seems like they have it all together. They have it figured out. Why am I not performing that way? Why is that not happening for me? And I think what helped me a lot when I was managing grads was sharing that I went through the same thing. And them seeing that, they're like, really? I'm like, yeah.
You
Yeah.
really?
Yeah. Really? Me? Yes, sometimes I have bad days.
Rarely.
But I think authenticity, being authentic, being relational, them seeing that you're just a human as well that's figuring it out, and you're not alone. Yeah. Just that can break down so many walls and make people feel safe to open up and share what they really want. Because that's how you're going to find out about, you were saying, intrinsic motivation. How do you find people's intrinsic motivation? Well, you have to be able to open up that conversation and them, and they feel comfortable sharing that. So just being relational, being authentic, getting them out of the usual environment, seeing how you can open up that conversation goes such a long way.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I'm a big fan of continuous feedback and those exactly that's what I took from my first ever job. Not the only thing, but the biggest piece was always ask for feedback, and that's how I create a safe space for them. I make myself vulnerable and I say, okay guys, how do you think this is going? Are you happy? We have formal ways of giving feedback, we have informal ways of giving feedback, and then through that I literally say to them, please be honest, because ultimately this is a partnership. We're building this experience together. So when I do the catalyst, for example, this is the experience and the best that I've seen from my own learning. But obviously you're a new cohort, you might have new needs. I'll tell you what I think will be giving you the best opportunities. But also if you see anything else, this is the time. I'm the person to go to. Tell me and we can work together to figure it out. So being honest, just saying, please tell me. Yeah. And I will help you, but I need to know.
Yeah, and then a partnership. It's a we thing that we're working out. Absolutely. It's your career, but it's us in it together, looking at a problem rather than across a desk, sort of trying to hash it out in a way that doesn't work ultimately. Exactly. And should some people, I'll ask it delicately, bring slightly less of themselves to work? I'm not naming any names.
I think I need to leave a little bit of myself at home sometimes.
Yes. I would. I think I go back to what I said before. There are certain limits, I think, and certain, I guess, for lack of etiquette. There is a work etiquette that you should work on, and I appreciate that maybe even when you join a company, especially if you're early career, you might not know what that is. And that's so fair because you would have just been in school with your friends. And then you go to, if you've gone to university, you're basically left alone for 3 years. True. And then you come back into an environment where there's all these unspoken rules. Mm-hmm. So I think you can give people grace for maybe doing too much sometimes, but I do think that's where it's our responsibility to step in and have those conversations, have the training, have the maybe some uncomfortable conversations where you say, hey, look, this is actually how you should do it. And I think I remember, oh my gosh, the amount of silly things I did when I first started. And I'm so happy. Those things, don't we? And I'm so happy that my manager would pull me in and say, actually, Lisandra, maybe there's a better way to do it. And through that, it's a little bit embarrassing, but thank God she clocked me then instead of me being 5 years into my career and still not coming across the same way, because ultimately, and what I say to the catalyst now, it's the way you come across. And if you do come across professionally, you build that trust with people, and people will trust you to be, reliable, like, and all these things that will then open up doors that maybe you didn't even know existed. And so it's in your benefit to find that balance. I'm not saying it because I want you to behave in a certain way. I'm saying it because it will benefit you.
Yeah, and in that way, it's not really restrictive. It's actually allowing them to go through the doors that are ahead of them.
Exactly.
And be a bit more free to do what they want to do in life.
Yeah.
What do you think, Blair?
Yeah, no, I was like pointing out myself.
Same.
But the reason I joke was like me, because I was thinking back to those moments where I did things where I'm like, oh, looking back, why did I do that? Like, why did I? Yeah. But like you said, I think that question really specifically applies to the grads, like their early careers, like that context. I think those are the people where you'll see you have to have those types of conversations. So I definitely had an experience of, having to instruct someone. Maybe you shouldn't share all of that. Or maybe if it's that person, just come to me directly versus putting it out there for everyone and things like that. I'm being very vague because I don't want to, Yeah. But yeah, definitely I've learned that lesson myself of like, maybe not everything has to be brought in to work. Like some things can be, but I think it's also understanding the environment you're in. Because I do think, and going back to like why I jokingly met me, I was just thinking of IW in general. I think we bring a lot of ourselves to work, but it's because we have an environment like that. We're a smaller company, and I think we have fostered like an environment where people do feel comfortable bringing, a lot of themselves to work. So I wouldn't say like at IW, like we need to like leave some, we just have big personalities here. But I do think depending on the environment you're in, it's learning that balance, like regardless if you're early career or anything, like there's some, I would guess maybe like at the investment bank, it's maybe a bit different, right? Like you probably had to bring half versus 80% of yourself, or
and I think you also have to remember that obviously everybody has like lives outside of work, and you have to be realistic. But you need to bring the stuff that will help you rather than hinder you. So maybe just have...
That's a helpful way of framing it,
Yeah, like bring yourself.
And not hinder others either.
Yeah, exactly.
Just that awareness.
Yeah, just because I like to chat doesn't mean everybody likes to chat.
Not all there. Same as the podcast.
Exactly.
And you mentioned before, Blair, that with grads in particular, you've got that age range that people could be 18 or they could be in their late 20s, maybe even beyond that. How do you give people the same support? I'm interested in how you do this at VML.
Yeah, so the way that we do it, so we have this all the time, and it's great because it means that we've kind of reached our goal of recruiting a very wide variety of people. But it does get a little bit challenging because people might be at different levels. So what we've done in the most recent year, and I'm always learning and figuring things out. We have a very structured training curriculum that everybody has to come to. We do a lot of surveys and things like that to really understand where people feel like their opportunities might be, and how then I can tweak some of that, some of the training. I let them be quite independent in terms of the e-learning and all that stuff. But I think the best thing to do is put them all together, and they can learn from each other and have that kind of community where they can rely on each other. So not a lot of times, or every month, they have different group projects that they'll work on together, and they just learn from each other. We also have something called Salbona, which is our recognition program, and they get to recognize each other. So you build that kind of safety within the community where they can give each other feedback as well, where they can check each other. And it's not always necessarily that the person who's maybe like a bit older knows more, and they might feel maybe out of depth a little bit. They might also feel like, oh, I can't ask questions because I should know this by now. So it's not necessarily that the youngest person in the group is literally just like floating around and everybody else knows what's going on. So I think each person brings their own strengths. I cover all of the bases, And then, say, for example, if they attend business communication and somebody's really, really proficient and they might not pay that much attention in the webinar, fine. But if it's useful for everybody else and everyone's attended and everyone's contributed to some degree, cool. Then I'm happy that all the bases are covered and then they can take their learning as far as they want with the tools that I give them.
So it's nice you using the problem of the diversity to benefit that community by letting them cross-pollinate and solve each other's problems, answer each other's questions. It sounds really helpful.
Well, I hope so, yeah.
And to wrap us up on the podcast, what tips would you have for putting a bit more passion into the way you perform in your job?
I would say sit down with yourself and be honest about why it is that you're doing what it is that you're doing. And that helped me a lot when trying to reflect on what is it that I actually really get out of this job. Initially, I thought that it was because I'm quite organized and I like to organize things, but it actually turns out that it was the giving back that I enjoyed. And then you can have conversations with your manager about, actually, this is what's motivating me. I'd like to do a little bit more of this. So that's how I moved from just running the Catalyst Academy into running Wise, because that's what I like to do. I like to work with these communities. So I would say just sit down, be honest. What is it that drives you? What do you get out of this? Because there will be days when everything in your diary is something you really, really don't want to do. And that's so fine, because some of those things need to get done. But if you know if you're passionate about the end result, then those things will be a lot more easier to do, and you will maintain motivation throughout, so you can actually perform even the things that you maybe don't really want to do. Yeah.
What about you, Blair? What are your tips?
I would say very simply, because it's worked for me, is learn your strengths. Find out what you're good at and learn how to leverage that. Because I think oftentimes, and we get that through feedback, a lot of feedback can be constructive criticism, which is super helpful. But I think what really changed for me was when someone actually told me my strengths, because I was surprised. Sometimes you don't know what you're good at. And sometimes we don't have those conversations enough. We talk about, in performance, we have to talk about where do we need to improve? How do we grow, improve? But actually, what are you doing really well? Yeah. And then when you find out what you're doing well, that can just be such a confidence boost. And then when you understand how to take what you do well, leverage it and translate it into how to deliver, it makes such a difference in the work that you do. And I think that's what made such a change in my performance this past year, is understanding, okay, these are my strengths. Now, how do I apply those strengths to the bigger goal of what we're trying to do? So I know I'm good at that. I can then utilize that to help drive that forward and make sure that we're achieving whatever it is we're trying to achieve. Yeah. So understand your strengths, then figure out how to leverage them.
Nice, good advice. There's a lot of chat about superpowers at the moment. I think that's kind of what
I'm learning my superpowers.
Yeah. It's a little bit cringy, but I think that's what it's getting at.
But lean into it.
Strengths isn't enough, but superpowers is the only other word we've got. Blair, tell us a little bit more about how we're helping organizations all over the world with all sorts of different things, including how they can increase their performance.
How are we doing that? I think that's a big question.
With a lot of
all over the world. With a lot of passion.
And pub trips.
I think, I don't know if this is like too much of like a high level answer, but I think what we're doing is we're making sure that whatever work we do with people remains engaging and fun at the end of the day. I mean, we just had the speakeasy that was about like work versus play, right? But I think that is the balance that we're always striking in what we do. So no matter who we work with, how can we make sure that it remains engaging? And I think that's what people come back. I mean, I have a client right here, but she hates when I call her a client. Yeah. But I think, because it goes beyond, just, okay, a lot of training is, we need them to learn the skill, we need to do that. But how do we make it stick? I think if it's engaging, it's memorable, and it's fun, and making sure that we're including that in whatever we do, I think is how we're helping people.
Yeah. And Lisandra, what's next for you? What are you putting your passions to next?
So next year, very excited that we're going to be growing the Catalyst Academy.
Amazing.
So we are going to be bringing all of our early careers under the same umbrella. So lots of work, but really excited. I'm looking forward to having a more, I guess, cohesive early career strategy. So I'm really looking forward to it. We've got Wise that we're going to be working on together. Actually, the Catalyst Academy too.
Yeah.
But we've got Wise. We're going to do an in-person event. So that's going to be so fun. We're going to be there. So that's going to be really
So
great.
excited.
Sign me up.
And I think that's enough. That's it. Those are my two big projects.
That's a lot to grapple with as it is, yeah.
Yeah, so that's it.
Great stuff. Exciting. Thank you both for joining me on the podcast. See you again soon.
See you soon.
Thank you.